So Outer Banks, one of the most popular Netflix shows, just came out with its third season, and I have some things to say about it. So that means big spoiler warning. If you haven't watched it already, don't get mad at me. Now, throughout this video, I'll pretty much be ranting about stuff that I don't like, but also I'll add in some things I do kind of like about it, but mainly what I don't like. I want to first off say that I don't think this season's bad, it's just not good, and at the end I'll give my full overall review of the season compared to the other seasons as well. So let's get right into it. So we start the season off right where season 2 ended, on the deserted island, and eventually they get saved by some random dude flying over the island one day, but they find out this guy isn't who he says he is, and he works for a very powerful man named Carlos Singh. And this is where I have my first problem with this show. Now, we already know that Wraith and Ward are the two bad guys, obviously, and adding in a third one isn't the worst idea, but I think the execution was poor. You see, Carlos is extremely powerful and feared, but the character itself just isn't scary. Like, when you look at this man, you don't think of a killer who will do anything to get what he wants, and the acting is not per se bad, but it just doesn't really do it for me. Like, for example, when Wraith's actor gets into his crazy side of himself, he really sells it, and the same with Ward when he gets really angry. But again, maybe that's just me, and that's just a personal, thing of mine. And maybe others find him scary. Just to me, I just don't think he's scary at all. Now we fast forward a little bit, where Key is stuck in the house with Carlos and surrounded by a fucking military. Like, look at this. What do you know? A bunch of kids wearing pretty bright shirts in the middle of a field just hop over a fence and crawl around and nobody sees them. Like, I know it's a show and some things are not realistic, but come on, man. It would make sense for at least one of them to get caught, and I think that would add a little bit more spice to the story. But I'll stop nitpicking and let's get to the part I like so far. I think the best moment from the first 2 episodes have to be when Key and Wraith end up together, stuck in the Carlos house. It leads to a somewhat surprising partnership. However, it doesn't last that long, as you can see here. But other than that, nothing really stood out to me being bad or good. It was just like, it makes sense. So let's fast forward a little bit. Now everyone's back together and ready to leave, but John B thinks that his dad's in a clock tower thing, so he leaves to go check. And then they get split up when Carlos's guys comes after them. But luckily for John B, after playing a little hide and seek with his dad, he finally gets reunited. And his dad tells him he's been working with Limbri, that woman who was obsessed with the cross from last season and wanted that magical cloth thing. Now, I just gotta say that, like, the whole leading up to John B and his dad meeting together and reuniting, it was pretty cool, but like it kind of makes sense, but like I feel like they could have done it in a much better way. It just felt kind of just, I want to say scripted, even though it was scripted. It just felt really, just stupid. But I mean, whatever, I guess. And I just had to mention all that with the cloth thing so it doesn't get confusing for what happens next in the show. Now when the rest of the group split up from John B and his dad start heading back to the OBX, here's something I don't really like. All of a sudden, Key and JJ are kind of like into each other just completely randomly. Like, it feels a little bit just weird. Yeah, it makes sense, but not at the same time. Like, a big chunk of last season was Key and Pope's relationship together, and it seems like it's kind of forced in the beginning with her and JJ. But later down the line, they do end up together, and Pope gets with Chloe, the Jamaican girl from last season, but I do actually kind of like that. But like I said, it felt a little bit forced with Key and JJ, but I digress. We then progress a little bit, and everyone's back on OVX and finds out Big John is alive. And these next few episodes are really all over the place, and to be honest, I just didn't really care about them that much. Pretty much everyone just splits up and kind of does their own thing. Now, I did like some bits of this, like Chloe and Pope's relationship. You get to see how they progress and strengthen over time. And I really like their interaction with Pope's parents. I think that's probably low-key the best relationship of the season. And because of this, they end up being able to find more clues to the treasure, which is El Dorado, which I didn't mention yet, but I just don't know why we kind of just said fuck the treasure, like fuck the gold, and went to El Dorado. Like, it kind of makes sense, I guess, because it's a bigger treasure, but did they? I don't think they mentioned it at all in the previous 2 seasons, like not a singular bit. So that's kind of another kind of ick I had about it. It was also kind of nice to see how John B and his dad ventured off together, but like, the relationship's kind of weird. Like, you get to see that a little bit more, how pretty much his dad is just only focused on the treasure and doesn't really, like, yeah, he cares about his son, but obviously the treasure is like, his main priority, which is kind of fucked up. Then we get to see Sarah, and well, she hooks up with Topper. That's really just gets the pot stirring. Now this part definitely felt weird since I don't like Topper, but that's not the main reason I'm bringing this up. I mentioned this part because apparently the real life actor John B and Sarah were a couple for a while, but John B ended up cheating on her. I don't know how true this is since I just kind of found out about this recently and it happened over a year ago, but if it's true, that's kind of fucked up. I can't imagine how awkward that would have been on set, especially for everybody. But yeah, this part wasn't anything I liked or disliked because at the end, John B and Sarah get back together and they kind of just like push Topper off to the side, like whatever, like pretty much say like it literally never happened. But just knowing that that happened IRL, I thought it would be interesting to talk about. Now let's get into the really bad story writing. There's a lot of things that don't make much sense. It seemed too easy for the protagonist, but this one takes the cake for the laziest writing. I mentioned that Limbri was working with John B, so while he and John B were looking for something, she ended up stealing their car so they would come back to her. And to get her off their back, Big John went up to her with a random made up story, a random cloth he found, and gave it to one of the, I guess, bad guys that were one of the main reasons they lost the cross in the first place. And she just believed this was the magic cloth that she's been looking for and literally was never seen for the rest of the season. Yeah, you can't make this shit up. Someone who spent most of their life looking for this piece of cloth gets a fake one and just believes that it's real and so we don't have to worry about it for the rest of the season. Like, I don't know, like I said, that is really lazy writing. Like if it was just this one thing, I guess I could overlook it, but there's so many little instances of just convenient and just bad lazy writing. I'm not gonna get into all of it, but I'll give you this other example. Wraith, you know, one of the other bad guys that's been in the show since the beginning, kind of just fucks off for the rest of the season. You see, Ward ended up going back to the OBX and he was gonna kill his dad to get him off his back so he can do whatever he wants pretty much. And at the last second, Wraith decides against it and he went to fight the guy who was sent to kill Ward. And in the whole mix-up, Ward ends up getting stabbed. And did I mention that Big John got kidnapped by Carlos and they were off to South America to find El Dorado, and Ward offered his plane to Sarah so that they can get to his dad? Yeah, I know, it's a lot, but bear with me. When Ward was stabbed, some guy ended up actually seeing the whole thing happen and called the police, so Wraith ended up taking Ward to the plane that Sarah and John B were waiting at, so he didn't end up getting arrested. Okay, so Ward gets on the plane and flies off, and it looks like that Wraith is in a lot of shit, but who knows, because we literally don't hear anything about him for the rest of the season. Again, he literally just fucks off. Okay, yeah, that was a lot to unpack, but it gets even crazier in the last 2 episodes. So everyone ends up getting to South America, but they're all kind of just split up into groups. John B and Sarah find his dad and they go to find the treasure. Also, Ward is with them for some reason. I don't know, just to fuck up the story, I guess. Ward then lets Carlos know where their location is as John B, his dad, and Sarah bring the artifact thing that they found to this certain place. Then the artifact starts glowing and shit, but I'm like 99.9% sure that whatever is happening here is literally impossible, but whatever, let's just go for it. But oh wait, Carlos ends up finding them and they get into a shootout and Big John ends up getting shot. They end up getting away from Carlos and there's multiple times where Sarah and John B see that he's been shot, but Big John says that it's a graze and pretty much making sure he's just gonna die at the end of the season, let's be honest here. But let's go back to the rest of the group real quick for some more lazy story writing. They end up finding some of Carlos's guys and make them go away by throwing some small fireworks at them, one at a time. Just watch this.
Is he behind it? Shit! We're surrounded! There's too many of them! Let's get out of here! Go, go, go!
Like, yeah, they were definitely surrounded after a few quote-unquote gunshots went off around them. It's pretty stupid. Like, bro is a trained guard. He's working for somebody with so much power, and he has an AR. Like, what the fuck am I watching? But let's just get back to John B, I guess. So Sarah and John B end up finding El Dorado, and Carlos ends up encountering with Big John. And this is where Big John, I guess, finally has his big character arc, and it seems like he finally cares a little bit about his son than finding the treasure, so he throws a TNT stick in order to distract Carlos and possibly get rid of the entrance of El Dorado, and he exceeds in blowing up Carlos during that. Then after it seems like all is over, one of Carlos's guys with a really weird accent comes through and holds them up after they leave the entrance. But the rest of the group shows up, including Ward, and in order to keep Sarah safe, he charges at the man, taking 2 or 3 gunshots in the stomach and supposedly falling to his death. And since Big John hasn't really told anyone that he got shot in the stomach yet, he kind of bleeds out as well. So yeah, that was a lot and might not have made much sense, and watching a lot of it didn't really make all that much sense either, as I'm not gonna lie, I kind of got bored at the end. But I guess the main villain of the show and Big John finally had their, you know, like I said before, big character arc, even though they're now dead. So yeah, John B and Sarah just officially finally lost their dads. That's fucked up. But then, you know, we skip 18 months in the future where they're all getting praised for finding El Dorado and the Royal Merchant, and they seem a-okay. But wait, what the fuck? Why are they just randomly skipping 18 months into the future like they wrapped up everything? Like, what happened to Limbri and Wraith and a whole lot of other characters? Like, what? There's so many different plot holes and shit for them to just skip a year and a half, but fuck me, I guess. And the season officially ends with somebody asking them to find Blackbeard's treasure or some shit. I don't really know, to be honest. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, I'm not a fan of the ending for, well, everything I just said. But my biggest complaint about this season is that all of the Pogues were together for maybe like 40 minutes in the entire season. Like, everyone was just so split up in their own world like 90% of the show. But even though I mainly bashed lots of the season, like I said in the beginning, it wasn't bad and it just wasn't super good either. If you haven't given season 3 a watch and you've watched the rest of the other seasons, I do believe you should watch it. I do think that season 1 is by far the best, and I think season 3 is way more interesting than season 2, so I'm gonna put that in second place, and then season 2 is going to get the last place for now. But at the end of the day, it's just my opinion, and I'm just some guy on the internet, so my opinion doesn't really matter. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, what you thought of the season, what you liked and disliked. As always, thank you so much for watching the end of the video, and have an amazing rest of your day. Peace.